Hi, these are the Style Pile notes. These notes help writers add sentence variety and style to their writing. Go beyond "my dog ran" to "my dog, the beautiful, courageous pug, ran hideously slow." Okay, here's how it works. Open up the notes. If you are in my class, you should have a digital copy in Google Classroom. If not, go to the URL and make a copy for yourself. Watch the lesson while filling in your notes. Only copy the parts in red font. Today's Style Pile lesson is going to focus on starting a sentence with an appositive. So, what is this? Your very first box, you're going to put starting with an appositive. Okay, we know some of this already because we learned about appositives. If you didn't watch the earlier video on appositives, go back and watch it. It is awesome. But we know some of this already because we learned about using appositives. So a quick review of what we know. When it comes to using appositives give us more information about the noun. So we have the noun Billy here, right? Well, right after it, we've got this appositive. So appositives are always next to a noun, a brilliant kid. Second rule is it gives us more information about the noun. So Billy, well, what about this Billy? He's a brilliant kid, right? Third rule is appositives are surrounded by commas. Fourth rule is the sentence has to make sense without the appositive in it. Billy has A's in all of his classes. Again, we know this because we've done some work with appositives at this point already. So all we're going to do now is we're going to build on that knowledge of knowing about appositives. We're going to take this appositive here, this one that says a brilliant kid, and we're going to move it to the start of the sentence to give it a little bit of sentence variety. Something like this. Now the appositive comes first. A brilliant kid. Billy has A's in all of his classes. It's just another way to use appositives to add style. So let's move on to that second box now, the rules and examples. Our first rule, number 1, it must give more information about the noun. Just like any other appositive, it gives more info about the noun. Rule number 2, it usually starts with a or the. It doesn't always start with a or the, but almost always it starts with those two words. Rule number 3, it must be followed by a comma. So there must be a comma after your appositive. Rule number 4, the sentence must make sense without the appositive phrase. So that should sound familiar because that's the rule that we learned before about using appositives. So let's go ahead and check these rules right here. So first rule, must give more information about the noun. Well, the noun is going to be Elk Grove here. Let's see if this first part gives more information about it. A beautiful town near the Sacramento area. Well, that's giving us more information about what Elk Grove is. That's where I live, by the way. So it gives more information about the noun. Boom, we got rule number 1. Rule number 2 usually starts with a or the. Well, look, we've got a right there. Rule number 2 we've got. Rule number 3 must be followed by a comma. Boom, we've got our comma right there. The sentence must make sense without the appositive phrase. Well, just like before, we'll cross out the appositive phrase, and now let's read it. Elk Grove is the perfect place to raise a family. That makes sense without it. We followed our 4 rules, so therefore we've used the appositive phrase correctly at the start of the sentence. If you need more time, feel free to pause the video, take down the notes you need, but we're going to move on to the next slide. Okay, so based on the 4 rules that we've just learned, I want you to look at the sentence and think, what is wrong with this sentence? So take a moment, pause the video. What is wrong with this sentence? All right, hopefully you took a moment to pause and kind of think about the 4 rules that we just learned to decide what is wrong with this sentence. Let's go through each one. Rule number 1 says it has to give us more information about the noun. The oldest man alive has given us more information about this noun, Fred. So right now, rule number 1's good. Rule number 2, it usually starts with a or the. Well, there is the, so it's got rule number 2. Rule number 3, it must be followed by a comma. Boom, it's a comma there. So far we followed the first 3 rules. But watch when we do rule number 4. The sentence has to make sense without the appositive phrase. Let's cross out the appositive phrase and let's read it. Is Fred was alive to see That makes no sense. Is Fred was alive? So it does not follow rule number 4. Even though it follows all the other rules, it still means that it is not using an appositive phrase correctly. Now I'm going to ask you a different question. Is this example correct? I'm not saying yes or no. Take a moment, pause the video, think, is this example correct? Okay, hopefully you took a moment to pause the video, and hopefully you came to the conclusion that it does use the appositive phrase correctly. Let's look at our 4 rules. First rule, it must give more info about the noun. Well, the noun here is Shakira. Well, who is Shakira? A beauty from a young age. That tells us more about who Shakira is, and she is very beautiful, by the way. Unless you're watching this video like 20 years from now, then she's probably old. But right now, she's beautiful. So, all right, rule number 2, it usually starts with a or the. We've got a right there. Boom, rule number 2. Rule number 3, a comma must follow it. We've got a comma following it. Rule number 4, you should be able to take out the appositive phrase, and the sentence should make sense. Shakira only gets better as she gets older. Not only does that sound good, but it's absolutely true. All right, really quick, I want you to pause the video and decide, does this sentence use an appositive correctly? All right, hopefully you took a moment to pause really quickly. If you don't know the word unkempt, that kind of means like disorganized or messy, so I'll put that here. If you said yes, you are correct again. It follows all 4 rules. First, it gives us more information, a rocky and unkempt mess. Gives us more information about the noun pathway. Good, we're good with rule number 1. Rule number 2, it starts with a. Rule number 3, followed by a comma. Rule number 4, you can cross it out and the sentence still makes sense. The pathway leading to the garden was still beautiful. All right, use it time, guys. The 3rd box on your notes. Describe a place you love, starting with an appositive phrase. Take a moment, pause the video. Describe a place you love, starting with an appositive phrase. Here's just one example of how this could be done. A world filled with laughter and dreams. Disneyland is my favorite place to travel, and it is. I go there like once a month, to be honest with you. So let's go through our 4 rules. First and foremost, a world filled with laughter and dreams gives us more information about Disneyland, because it is a world filled with laughter and dreams. Second rule, it starts with a. Cool, it's got that. 3rd rule, followed by a comma. 4th rule, if we cross it out, Disneyland is my favorite place to travel. That makes sense. More examples here. 1 about the tallest man in the world that I made up. 2, this one's about me. Pew! Your job now. Add appositives to the start of your sentences to add style and flair to your writing. A great way to add style to your writing, starting with a positive, is a great way to add style. It's kind of repetitive, but just don't overdo it when you add appositives to the start of your sentences. What I mean is you want to have sentence variety, so start a few sentences with appositives, some with infinitive phrases, so on and so forth. That way it's not always the same exact way you're starting your sentences. Thank you for using these notes. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask your teacher, maybe to check your use it to verify you've done it correctly.